episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome, everybody, again to another episode of our show with another fascinating guest who is helping to create a better tomorrow for so many people. As a little background, the organization Cures Within Reach is a philanthropic leader in drug, device, and nutraceutical repurposing research, which is an area we've talked a little bit about on past episodes, which really has the potential to transform the lives of patients with unmet medical needs by delivering really novel treatments that can be used in the near term. We're honored today to be joined by Barbara Goodman, who's president and CEO of the organization and leads Cures Within Reach and its mission to drive more treatments to more patients quickly through repurposing research, and is ultimately helping the organization to develop a range of new partnerships and expand their current relationships with donors, sponsors, partners, industry, and government. Barbara has 25 years of international business and healthcare, biomedical life science sector experience focused on planning, implementation of strategic growth initiatives at both for-profit and nonprofit corporations. Prior to Cures Within Reach, Barbara led the Life Science Industry Association iBIO Institute's PROPEL Center for nearly 10 years, where she led programs to increase the number and success rate of early stage life sciences companies in Illinois and supported iBIO's national activities. Barbara previously worked in corporate strategy and business development at the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago, now the Shirley Ryan AbilityLab, Cardinal Health Medical Products and Services Division, and Chesapeake Corporation. Barbara earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in International Relations at the University of Minnesota and a Master's Business Administration at Thunderbird School of Global Management. Barbara Goodman, thank you so much for taking the time on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
It's really great. Barbara, typically we start off, we hand the floor over to our guests just for a little bit to talk about themselves. If you can just introduce yourself, give us a little bit about you, where you grew up, how you got involved in this really fascinating area of the life sciences, a little bit of your journey today. I think that'd be a great way to start things off.
Right, absolutely. I would say my background and journey is pretty typical, where you think you have a plan and then you never know the direction and how you ended up here. But I suddenly have a 25-year career in strategy growth and implementation, all in healthcare. I started out doing the corporate mergers and acquisitions plan, loved it, really, really thrived in it, and realized healthcare sector is really where I wanted to be, and focused at that point on, 10 years of for-profit strategy growth and planning, mergers and acquisitions, divestitures, JV, things like that. After 10 years on the for-profit side, I decided to do strategy and corporate development on the not-for-profit side. And that's when I went to what is now the Shirley Ryan AbilityLab. At the time, it was the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago. Best in class, also based in Chicago, where I currently live. And it was an eye-opening experience from a mission-driven organization. I think anyone who has spent time in the not-for-profit sector, who decides to stay and thrives in the not-for-profit sector, has an experience like I did, where the mission is tangible and helping patients and driving patient care is tangible. And I have been in the not-for-profit sector ever since. I've now been in not-for-profit side of healthcare for 15 years, as opposed to for-profit 10 years. After leaving the Shirley Ryan AbilityLab, doing corporate strategy, I was looking for a new way to use that skill set, and ended up helping for, as you introduced me, 10 years, helping startups and entrepreneurs understand what their exit was going to look like and how to prepare themselves, raise money, and pitch their companies to an exit to someone that looks like me. Having been in corporate M&A for a long time, I knew exactly how to position it and really help guide them and create that first story. So I did that for 10 years on the not-for-profit side. Really, really exciting to see a lot of diverse drugs, devices, diagnostics coming out of Illinois. And then after 10 years, I was looking for a new challenge. I had known about Cures Within Reach in the Illinois ecosystem for a really, really long time. It was an organization, again, where I just found the mission to be fascinating and wanted to help it grow. So I started with a volunteer role, helping a strategic business plan. It was a growth strategy plan. We presented it to the board. The president at the time said, okay, join us and help implement it. And that's when I made the jump. And I've been at Cures Within Reach now for 3.5 years. And I'm now leading it as president and CEO.
Outstanding, outstanding. You know, here we are in 2021, and we talked a bit offline about how, you know, it's a very different era today than it was, say, 20 years ago, where, you know, it was a young biotech company or whatever, and my options were pretty straightforward. It was either some angel investors here or some venture capital here. Now there's a variety of models out there in 2021, and we've, you know, talked a little bit on the show about prize models and different challenges, philanthropy in general. When you and I were chatting offline, I said, you know, how do you describe what Cures Within Reach does? And you said we're an impact philanthropy. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so a lot of people have heard of impact investing. And when it's, you know, starting to use investment dollars, not just for a high rate of return, but to make an impact as well, whether it's in social impact opportunities or, you know, climate change, whatever your choice of social impact may be, it's that impact side. And we see ourselves at Cures Within Reach as one step prior to impact investing. And that's why we call it impact philanthropy, because we don't yet know, when we make a funding decision, we don't yet know if there is going to be commercial value, or perhaps a project that we select and fund might just have philanthropic value, which, as a not-for-profit, that patient-focused impact, the value to the patient and the caregivers and the family is just as important, if not more important, than any other type of value we create. So we talk about impact philanthropy because we're investing in de-risking and selecting projects before it's known if there's investment opportunity. When there is an opportunity to create a commercial plan and bring it all the way to regulatory approval, we're extremely supportive of it getting into the right industry players' hands. When there may not be an opportunity, we're extremely supportive of getting the data out there. The researchers and the clinicians that we fund, we want them to publish, present, and get follow-on funding to get the randomized controlled data set that allows clinicians to make their own decisions. And that's also a win, and an important win for us as well.
And we've, you know, as I mentioned, we've talked about this concept of repositioning a bit in sort of discrete cases in the past, and you know, we have this sort of tremendous dimension, several dimensions of sort of drugs that have been developed over the last 100+ years. I mean, a case of one of the best repositioning examples in my mind is always aspirin. Here we have something it was developed in 1880 whatever. We're still finding out about new stuff it does based on sort of the chemical space, and that's the chemistry is very unique and can go in a variety of different directions. You mentioned, when you talk about repurposing at Cures Within Reach, you're specifically talking about therapeutic entities, whether they're drugs or nutraceuticals, what have you, that have some type of approval already, and you contrast that with a repositioning of something where it might be a drug that makes it to phase 3, didn't do too well, let's try it in something else. Talk a little bit about your view of repurposing at the organization, and a little bit about how the model is set up currently.
Yep, absolutely. And it's a differentiation that we do make. There's nothing wrong with repositioning. It happens all the time. It's absolutely fantastic. Remdesivir is a great example where it moved quite far and a wonderful opportunity to impact patients. It's a great repositioning example that a lot of people have heard of over the last 11 months due to the pandemic. With repurposing, because these are already approved by any regulatory agency, it doesn't need, for us, it doesn't need to be the FDA. It often is, but it doesn't need to be. But any regulatory agency has given it approval. We know its safety and efficacy plans. We have data and studies. And so for us, because we're focused on quick to impact and cost effectiveness, we can support projects that researchers bring to us that can very quickly get to patients, get to human clinical trials, where you don't have a lot or you don't need any late stage animal data. Perhaps you might need some dosing or tolerability, but you can very, very quickly bring these to a human clinical trial. And it's a speed to impact. For us, it's a speed to impact and effectiveness. It's safe, it's effective, and you're looking at, can this also work in a different indication?
And, I watched a recent presentation that you gave where, you were talking a bit about sort of the balance of the portfolio. You do a lot in rare diseases. And as, we chatted about how David Feigenbaum from down the street here at Penn was recently on this show and used the example of rapamycin, found a wonderful repurpose for it in Castleman's disease. But at the same time, rapamycin is being used or looked at as for really big indications like the general sort of diseases of aging. So a widespread there for repurposing. Talk a little bit about how you sort of look at the portfolio, how you decide, hey, we're going to look at this product as in a rare disease. I also saw something like Alzheimer's as your presentation. So talk a little bit about sort of rare versus the blockbuster thinking when you look at projects to invest in.
Absolutely. So we currently have a portfolio view based in what we call a community model. So we have disease communities, geographic communities, and our newest area is in population group communities. Okay. So we look at disease areas, are areas where we already have and know there's a lot of opportunities in rare diseases, as you said, just under 40% of our current portfolio are in rare diseases. Oncology is a great opportunity for repurposing. We have currently 22% of our projects are in oncology. And as you said, we put neurological projects in one category. It includes things like Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative diseases, but it also, for us, includes mental health. So depression, PTSD, there's a lot of opportunity in the mental health space. And those are our three disease communities. We have three geographic communities right now: Chicago, the Mid-Atlantic, and the developing world. And we have those because we have funders who are specifically interested in making an impact in those geographic areas. Our third group is the population segment. Those are our newest areas. We recently, just a few weeks ago, launched our pediatrics initiative with a funder who's specifically interested in partnering with us to create an impact in a broad pediatric space. Veterans is another area. I already mentioned PTSD and depression. There's a real opportunity to make an impact in veterans issues, including mental health and brain injuries. So there's a lot going on there. And we are also in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space with our minority and underserved research category. So last year, we funded for the first time a project to make an impact in health disparities research, specifically in COVID-19, due to the high prevalence and incidence in patients in the communities of color. And this is a project in health disparities to try and reduce the burden in Black and Latinx communities. We realized that this was an amazing opportunity to really make an impact in the health disparities that are going on using repurposing, because we know that there's a lot of mistrust of the healthcare system. We think using drugs, devices, nutraceuticals that are already safe and effective, it might help engage communities of color to participate in clinical trials in a different way. Another area for diversity, equity, inclusion is in any disease area, but for projects that are led by minority and underserved researchers. Wouldn't it be great to get enrollment because the head of the research looks like you? And so we're raising funds in those areas, the 9 areas that I just mentioned. We select those areas when a funding partner, whether it's a foundation, individual donor, family office, or corporate partner, says, we want to partner with you in these specific areas. Let's make an impact. And that's where our focus is driven, but it's always in repurposing, and it's always in that fast to patient impact.
Very cool. You know, one of the going through this presentation you gave recently, one of the things that stood out to me is really interesting, and we don't normally think about, because it really adds a whole other dimension to sort of therapeutic possibilities, are combinations. Normally, it's impossible as me as a small drug developer to develop, even if I know that these chemical A and chemical B together is much more than A plus B. It's very difficult to do that in a traditional context, and usually combinations are only put together later on, but perfect for you because we're working these already. I forget what the example was in the presentation though, but can you talk a little bit about this? Because this is a really, I think, underappreciated area of the possibilities of repurposing existing products.
And you're talking specifically about combination products, right?
Yeah, I forget what the example was in the presentation, but yeah.
Well, I can give you an example that's really just a recently completed project for us.
Okay.
It's a great example of our ideal time to fund and the impact that our studies can do. So at the University of Chicago, they last year completed a study in non-small cell lung cancer.
Okay.
And it was combining 2 cancer drugs with radiation therapy. These 2 drugs were approved in a different type of cancer. In combination with radiation therapy, they did a very small trial to see if it would make a better impact on patient and quality of life and impact on the patient. We funded only a small portion of the study, so we were building on other funds in this pivotal study at the University of Chicago. That original small population group study finished with such intriguing results that an industry partner is working with the University of Chicago to fund the follow-on study, a much larger patient group, to really get a more robust data set to move that to patient care much more broadly. So that's a great example where we knew these drugs already worked over here. This is investigator-initiated work. So these are not our ideas coming up with. We'll have a call for proposals. And in this case, the researchers submit their ideas. We're helping find the best and the strongest likelihood of success projects. In this case, in the example I just gave you, it's using 2 drugs in combination with radiation therapy in a brand new way.
That was it, yeah. Yeah, very, very elegant. How does the Cure Accelerator work in terms of the online sort of component of this? What is that all about?
Yeah. So back in 2015, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation gave us a grant to create the world's first online platform for repurposing research. So what is now Cure Accelerator? It is our global platform. It's where all the researchers and clinicians can submit their ideas. Only the public title and the public abstract is publicly available. All the other information is available to internal only. All the researchers and clinicians can submit their ideas, whether or not it's an open call for proposals. We're seeking out proposals, or they just have the idea for some future submission. Right now, today, we have 2 open calls for proposals, one in pediatric rare diseases and one, as I mentioned before, impacting veterans. We're going to have several other RFPs posted on the Cure Accelerator platform. So the original submissions from the researchers and clinicians are on that platform, and the first round of review that we go through is also done and performed on that platform. So we have a 2-stage review process for all of our projects that we select. The first stage, like I said, is done on Cure Accelerator. It's done by staff, our science advisory board, and external volunteer grant review committee members who represent academia, clinicians, industry, and the patient voice. So it's not a black box like a lot of NIH and other grant selection programs. Not only do we share the feedback with our submitted research and clinicians, we want them to strengthen their projects for those projects that are selected to submit a full grant application. That portion is done outside of Cure Accelerator, but it's a great tool, and we're looking to build it out over the next several years. We see a great opportunity for case reports and for other opportunities on Cure Accelerator platform. But it's about 6 years old now. All of our RFPs are posted on there, and clinicians for real easy to get involved can post their projects on there as well.
And I thought in the request for proposals, at one point, did you have a canine project that you have an RFP out for?
We did.
Okay.
And it's a great project. That was a partnership with another organization looking to make an impact in canine projects. And in doing that call for proposals, the idea is, first of all, it is repurposing. The project we selected is canine oncology. And the idea is, if it works in canines, can it be applicable to humans? And the project and the goal of that particular funding, and again, the funding partner has said, we want to fund this. So we see that project almost like a preclinical. It's an animal study, but it's also making an impact in canine oncology as well.
Really cool. Yeah, no, I've done some animal health episodes, and there's always that sort of difficulty. And, I think a lot of people always have the idea that, well, it's so easy to get, do canine studies or do whatever, and that's a faster road to get to market with a new drug. But the concept, once again, of repurposing here, you have something. Wow, it's really is the nice example.
Right, and if it works with canines, wouldn't it be great then as the follow-on to study it in humans in a very, very different way?
Absolutely. Obviously, you have a lot of ongoing and completed programs in the portfolio. Take a couple minutes. I mean, obviously, you can't choose one over the other, but are there other exciting projects that you can talk about that are most exciting to you that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, I'm not supposed to have favorites, but I do have ones that I think demonstrate the power of repurposing, not only to lay people, but to anyone who's getting to know our organization. And the one I always use is the best example is one, it's actually a project that won a competition of ours back in 2018. Okay. The competition we have, it's called Cure Accelerator Live. So it's based on the platform Cure Accelerator, but this is a live event. Imagine any startup business plan competition that you've attended where entrepreneurs are pitching their business plans, but now swap out and put in clinicians and researchers who are pitching their clinical repurposing trial in an 8-minute pitch with a set of panelists who are probing and asking questions about the clinical repurposing trial. And then everyone in attendance votes on the project that should get a $50,000 grant from Cures Within Reach. We started this program, this way of bringing clinical trial research to the general public. We started it about 4 years ago, and we're expanding it all the time in different themes. So the project that I really like to talk about that's a wonderful example of our work is a project that won this competition in 2018. The project is ongoing today at Penn State. And it's for, in fact, it's not even for a disease, it's for limb trauma patients who are in a horrible accident or thinking about active military who have an unfortunate problem in the field of battle where your limb, whether it's an arm or a leg, has severe damage. And the orthopedic trauma surgeons do not know for sure if the nerves have been severed or crushed. There is no clear diagnosis if those nerves are crushed or severed. And based on that diagnosis, there's a very different treatment plan, surgery versus letting the limb sit for a while. And so this particular clinician and researcher had this idea to use a generic multiple sclerosis drug given to these patients as an indicator. Think about it. as a almost like a light bulb flickering. If you know the light bulb flickers, the system is working, there's just a problem. But if the light bulb doesn't flicker, there is a real issue. And it's a way to, again, measure if that light bulb doesn't flicker, the nerve has been severed. Mm-hmm. And if there's a little flicker, the nerve has been crushed, and the orthopedic trauma surgeon can have a very different plan of action. So it won this competition by a lot. The ongoing project is very, very small, but it's such an intriguing project that the DoD is working and talking to the researcher. The NIH is talking to the researcher. It's, like I said, it's still underway, but there are other colleagues of that researcher who are using this protocol in patients and looking to move this further along in the meantime from active military who could use this extremely quickly. If this study shows to be effective, it could be game-changing, not only for active military, but certainly for orthopedic trauma surgeons anywhere. It's a really fascinating project, and we're really proud to be funding that first in human study.
Absolutely. One other thing before we get to the wrap up, I see aside from drugs, you also mentioned nutraceuticals, which is another fascinating area because you're dealing with, well, at least for the most part, when I think about nutraceuticals, I think about sort of plant materials, extracts, and so forth that are combination. Obviously, we have come with some data. Wow, there's a population here that's used this thing for 500 years. It's pretty safe and we can study it quickly. Is the goal in this particular case to develop nutraceuticals for a certain therapeutic endpoint, or to maybe transition nutraceuticals? Because now in the US we have this FDA has this sort of the botanical segment where you can actually develop a nutraceutical as a drug. What are some of your, what are you doing there? If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I can give you two examples of ongoing projects we have in the nutraceutical space.
Cool.
One is the Health Disparities Project that I already mentioned for COVID-19. And that, we know through studies that vitamin D seems to improve outcomes and reduce the burden of COVID-19 on patients. We also know that certain population groups have less vitamin D than others. And so the project that is ongoing at the University of Chicago is to give different dosing to Chicagoans to determine if vitamin D can reduce the burden of COVID-19. Enrollment is focused on Black and Latinx communities of color, who we know through studies have a tendency to have a lower vitamin D than others. So the data is already out there that vitamin D is a really, really important nutraceutical or vitamin for humans. And this is the data needed to be able to say definitively, can it impact COVID-19, but can it also impact other areas as well as follow-on? So that's one example. Another project was the winner of that Cure Accelerator live event, but this one was focused on rare diseases. And the June 2020 winner is using a nutraceutical acetylcysteine for patients with myeloproliferative neoplasms, MPNs. And it's a set of blood cancer diseases. She believes out at the University of California, Irvine, that if you give this nutraceutical to MPN patients, they'll reduce risks of certain side effects and progression in a few other areas. It's a great example of the importance of a not-for-profit like Cures Within Reach, because there's very small likelihood that there's going to be a commercial opportunity for this. This is a nutraceutical that's extremely cheap. It's easy to get to. And if this works, we should be rolling out this opportunity for MPN patients all over. When you have a strong data set that is published in a peer-reviewed journal, we want clinicians to be able to make their own decisions and to recommend this to the patients. But to go all the way through to regulatory approval, even as a nutraceutical, it's extremely unlikely. And it's a great example where, this project won that competition, not because the other projects were less intriguing. We had pediatric cancer in that competition. We had some really compelling projects, but everyone understood. And when we asked attendees, why did you vote for this one? It's because no one else is going to fund something that just needs this $50,000 to make an impact, and the data can get published. So in this case, it's a great example of what a $50,000 grant from Cures Within Reach can do to these patients with the data.
Absolutely. Fascinating portfolio. Very diverse. Must be exciting to deal with all these projects at one time, but really impressive. Barbara, typically we ask a wrap-up question. Coming back to you. You've had an amazing career now. Important mentors, influencers, teachers along the way, anyone that you want to mention, shout out to, that have really kept Barbara Goodman on this particular path, and if it wasn't for them, you'd be off doing something totally different right now with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not going to name names, but I did already mention in the beginning that my time at the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago was the first time I'd been at a not-for-profit. And it surprised me how much it really focused my career to stay in the not-for-profit side of healthcare. After spending, my first 10 years working for-profit, always publicly traded companies. And so following that mission-driven focus really did change my career. I would say there's a handful of things that many different people have shared with me that I always take with me. One is never burn a bridge. I cannot tell you how many times not burning a bridge, even if I wanted to, or felt inclined to, always take the high road, never burn a bridge, because whether you're in healthcare or any other industry sector, people know each other. And never burning a bridge is really solid advice that I got a while ago. The other advice I got that I think is important is people always say, how did you end up in this career? Or how did you end up here? And I always say, and said in every job when I was getting antsy, there's three things that are important when you're looking at a position: the industry you're in, the job you'll be doing, and the people you're going to be doing it with. And if you're not happy with all three of those, or you certainly aren't happy with two of those, it's probably time to look for another role. And I've really focused a lot on having all three. And when you have all three, it makes it extremely easy to spend as much time as you do at work, and have the energy, the enthusiasm, and the focus to get where you want to go. And that's really helped me as I look back on my career.
Outstanding message. Barbara, it's been a really great time listening to you into the story, and really wishing you the best with all of these projects going forward. You really have a lot on your plate, but it's extremely exciting, an extremely exciting model. For everybody that's going to be listening to this episode on the podcast or watching on the YouTube channel, you've been listening to Barbara Goodman, President and CEO, Cures Within Reach, leading the organization's mission to drive more treatments to more patients with unmet medical needs quickly through innovative repurposing research. Barbara, I want to take the time to say thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and story with us. And as we say, thank you for helping to create a better tomorrow through these programs for so many people. It's been a really great time talking to you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.